In an almost unprecedented move, Russia was booted off the United Nations Human Rights Council today over alleged war crimes committed in Ukraine. But the move, which has only happened once before to Libya, is largely symbolic. In practical terms, Ukraine repeated its appeals to NATO for more military equipment to help fight Russian forces said to be gathering for a major offensive in the east of the country. More from our US correspondent, Emma Murphy.
They have been told to flee for their lives, the warning from their government that the battle for Ukraine's east will resemble the ferocity of battle in World War II. The horrors discovered elsewhere suggest these are not empty words. And so they are on the move, young and old, seeking survival, adding to the 4 million plus who've already fled Ukraine. On the move too, the politicians seeking a way to defend, if not end the assault. Ukraine's foreign minister meeting with NATO and G7 allies clear in his message.
My agenda is very simple. It has only 3 items on it. It's weapons, weapons and weapons. We are confident that the best way to help Ukraine now is to provide it with all necessary to contain Putin and to defeat Russian army in Ukraine, in the territory of Ukraine, so that the war does not spill over further.
Amid pledges to offer more weaponry came a warning from NATO's Secretary General.
We don't see a Russian retreat. What we see is a Russian regrouping and repositioning of their forces, moving out of northern Ukraine, but at the same time moving those forces to the east, and we expect a big battle in Donbass, a big Russian offensive.
With civilians dying under Russian assault, the United Nations moved to remove Russia from the Human Rights Council.
Russia's actions are beyond the pale. Russia is not only committing human rights violations, it is shaking the underpinnings of international peace and security.
The Russians fought the motion right to the vote.
We reject the untruthful allegations against us based on staged events and widely circulated fakes.
The General Assembly is now voting on suspension of the rights of membership of the Russian Federation in the Human Rights Council.
In the end, those words were dismissed by 93 nations and Russia was dismissed from the Council. However, 24 countries voted against and 58 abstained. Such acts are symbolic, but how futile and far from reality they must feel to those fleeing for their lives. Emma Murphy, ITV News, in the United States.
Well, in the past few days, we've seen the human cost of resisting Russia's forces in Ukraine. The images and first-hand accounts have been stark. And today, ITV News went to a city which was surrounded but managed to hold off Russian attempts to capture its historic centre. As our correspondent Dan Rivers found out, in Chernihiv, to the north of Kyiv, the heroic resistance came at a massive cost to the villages around the city.
At what was once a front line, the people of Chernihiv are getting used to a newfound freedom, assessing the damage to their city, which withstood the might of the Russian army and prevailed. Chernihiv has a proud history dating back more than 1,000 years, and this last month will go down among its citizens as one of its proudest chapters. The soldiers who stood firm are beginning to redeploy. Their bravery ensured Chernihiv's historic centre is largely untouched. Everywhere there are emotional reunions among friends and families who thought they might never see each other again.
We are crying for joy that we're still alive. We had tanks parked under our window, shooting at our city.
But when you travel to Chernihiv's periphery, there is a glimpse of the true cost of resistance. This is the village of Yahidne. Almost every building has been shredded.
As the Russians advanced south from Belarus, Chernihiv was the first major city they encountered. They just about encircled it, they lay siege to it for more than a month. But it was actually villages like this which took the brunt of the fighting.
Most of the villagers were detained in a cellar under a school for a month. With so many homes destroyed, many are still here. Inside, pictures drawn by children in the long, cold days of confinement.
11 people died in this cellar. Every 2 to 3 days, people would die, and then we would take the corpses out. And when they allowed us to bury the bodies, we'd use wheelbarrows. We would start to dig a trench, and they start to shell us.
The local Ukrainian commander confirms arbitrary killing was widespread here.
Many of the local population who refused to go to the school, who were fighting age, were simply killed by a shot to the head. And for a long while, they were just lying on the street.
For those that survived the month-long terror here, they're returning to homes which look like they've been hit by a hurricane. But this was deliberate destruction, designed to punish people simply for being Ukrainian. Dan Rivers, ITV News, Chernihiv.